Hey there and welcome back to NBA 2K18's My League mode. My name is Pete and today we complete a potentially franchise-defining episode because not only are we going to advance past the NBA Finals today, we will also take our first steps into the offseason, and with the incredible talent in the draft class, that offseason could be hugely important for us. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, we still have an NBA Finals matchup to look at as the Golden State Warriors face off against the Washington Wizards. The Warriors, unsurprisingly, back in the finals for the fourth consecutive time, while Washington snuck in as the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference, now making its first finals appearance since 1979. And we'll go through the series game by game, just to keep things a bit more exciting. The Warriors start off at home and take the first game behind Stephen Curry's 35 points, while in game number 2 it's Kevin Durant who steps up for 33 points and puts the Warriors up 2-0. Game number 3 and the Warriors win again, and we can already smell the sweep coming here. And yes, no surprises here, with the clock ticking down in Washington, the Warriors win the final game of the series 115-103 and repeat last year's success and win their third title in 4 years. And so congratulations go out to the Golden State Warriors, your 2018 NBA champions. And with that, the Golden State Warriors have won their 6th title in franchise history, tying the Chicago Bulls for the 3rd most NBA championships. The Finals MVP this year, Kevin Durant, who averaged about 30 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal and a block, and he did all of that shooting almost 60% from the field and over 40% from deep. And I think with that stat line, the MVP honors are well deserved, so congratulations again. However, this year's NBA championship a bittersweet one for the Warriors. After putting up 35 points in the first game, Stephen Curry would injure himself in this series, and he suffered a ruptured right Achilles, sidelining him for the entire next season. And even if he might be back for one of the later rounds in the playoffs, this is certainly devastating news for the Warriors, who lose the face of their franchise here. Now, I have little doubt that the Warriors will be able to make it into the playoffs regardless, but this injury, as bad as it is, might make the next season a lot more interesting. And with that, we have officially made it into the offseason. And up first, we have player retirement. Among others, we see Dirk Nowitzki retire after a 19-year career with the Mavericks. Paul Pierce did not get signed by anyone this year and therefore also retires now after 18 years in the NBA, and 40-year-old Manu Ginobili also decides it's time to hang him up. With Udonis Haslem and Nick Collison, 2 more long-time franchise veterans retire for the Heat and Thunder, Haslem after 14 and Collison after 13 years spent with their teams. And this year's Hall of Fame inductees are, I think, more than well-deserved, Dirk Nowitzki and Paul Pierce, although I would argue that Ginobili should definitely be up here as well. Well, maybe he makes it in next year. After all, Ginobili was one of the most accomplished international players in the NBA. We move on to jersey retirement, and here Ginobili gets the honors he deserves. His number will go up in the rafters in San Antonio, and the iconic number 41 will do the same in Dallas. If you're missing Paul Pierce here, then don't worry, his number is already retired by the Celtics. We move on to the league meetings where potential rule changes might happen, but in this first season all 5 proposals get rejected. So no changes to the draft lottery, no implementation of a sudden death rule in overtime, no decrease of the foul limit per player, no changes to long-term contracts for older players, and also no changes to the rules for trading first-round draft picks. And since nothing has changed, we also won't override anything, and instead we can move on to league realignment. Also no changes here, although I thought about it. That Southwestern Division is definitely a slaughterhouse now that OKC is also in there, but I also couldn't really come up with a better solution, so we'll leave things be for at least one more season. And now we have the draft lottery coming up, the first important event of the offseason. And our unexpected success in this first season with 30 wins was good enough to get us out of the top 3 here, and so we're now more or less tied with the Indiana Pacers for the 5th highest chance at the first overall draft pick. But even if that doesn't succeed, a top 5 pick should be realistic here. So let's speed up the first few picks here. Number 16 goes to Minnesota, number 15 to Philadelphia, and that 15th pick originally belonged to the Lakers. The Kings get pick number 14, the Bulls number 13. The Aces land in the middle of the pack with pick number 12, and I'm interested to see where they go from here, because they did have a few older guys on the roster, and one of them, Joe Johnson to be exact, has already retired. Pick number 11 goes to the Knicks, pick number 10 to an underperforming Portland Trailblazers team, who I did not expect to end up that low in the regular season standings. Pick number 9 goes to Orlando, pick number 8 to Memphis, pick number 7 to Dallas, and number 6 to Indiana, and that means we are now guaranteed to pick within the top 5. and that is also exactly where we end up with the 5th overall pick in the 2018 draft. Of course, I would have loved to jump maybe a spot or two higher, but number 5 definitely not a bad spot to be in. For pick number 4, the Cavaliers are projected to get it, but the Phoenix Suns actually receive it, and that means the Cavaliers, who own the Brooklyn pick and have not traded it, will now move into the top 3. And the 3rd overall pick goes to Atlanta, and that means picks number 1 and 2 are now decided between Miami and Cleveland. And would you believe that the 2nd overall pick actually goes to Miami, and that means the Cleveland Cavaliers once again receive a 1st overall draft pick. The Cavaliers now with the chance to potentially draft Luka Doncic, and who knows, maybe LeBron James comes back as well, and that would certainly be a very interesting team. Now there is one more thing to take care of before we head into the draft itself, and that is staff signing. Right now we only have one open position to fill in our staff, and I think we'll also leave it that way and make no other moves. Our assistant GM actually looks very promising right now. Our coaching staff isn't the best, but both of them have 3 years left on their contracts, and they did manage to push the team to 30 wins, so there's that. The head scout and trainer were positions we already filled with new guys at the beginning of the series, and so I would say let us now do the same with the CFO. As far as I know, this position only really has an impact in my GM and not that much in my league, but still I think it can't hurt to go after the top 3 candidates here. So for Gary Harris, not Denver Nuggets Gary Harris however, we're going to offer the maximum 4 years for $1.2 million per year. After all, he does have the best business rating among all available candidates. Kevin Nicholson is slightly behind Harris in his rating, and his potential isn't the best either, so we'll only offer him 3 years with slightly below $1 million per year. Our 3rd and final offer then goes to Logan Mills, who also has an A- rating, but with a B+ potential rating definitely shows some promise for the future. And that is why we also offer him a full 4-year contract worth slightly over $1 million per year. And in the end here we are the lucky ones, all 3 candidates accept our offers, and we can now choose who to sign. And in the end I went with Logan Mills. His business rating is not quite as good as Harris's, but I have to admit his potential is intriguing, and over the course of a 4-year contract he would save us $600,000 compared to Harris. Nicholson then has the same business rating as Mills, but his potential is worse, and that also factored into my choice to go with Mills in the end. So Logan Mills, congratulations on your new job as the CFO of the Louisville Legionnaires. Now up next we have the draft combine, where all of the draft prospects get measured and also medically evaluated. And that almost always reveals a few injury concerns, for example this one, which might be a huge story. There are apparently serious injury concerns with Marvin Bagley's knees, and that is definitely something we should keep an eye on, as Bagley was pretty much a lock for the top 3 in this draft, and this could now result in a noticeable drop in value. That means he could fall to us with the 5th pick, but given that we have no idea how serious the injury actually is, I'm a bit hesitant here. We also have another injury concern with Raymond Bamba, but he is a prospect that will likely get picked in the late 2nd round, if at all. Now for some reason the results of the draft combine remained completely empty, and that is something I have noticed before in this series. The entire mock draft menu, for example, is also empty. So I don't know whether or not this has something to do with the series itself or only with the draft class, but it definitely is a bit annoying. If any of you have experienced this as well and know a way how to fix it, then of course feel free to let me know. Now, despite the lack of info from the draft combine, we still know a lot about our prospects already. And with draft night getting closer and closer, I think we should now talk about who to target with that 5th pick. Now, I think it's safe to say that both Doncic and Porter will be off the books by the time we get to pick, while Bagley, with his recently uncovered injury, might drop a bit lower. At this point, however, I don't think I want to bet the future of the franchise on an injured player, and therefore, even if Bagley is still available with the 5th pick, I don't think we're going to pick him up. And that leaves us now with a few other interesting targets who are predominantly big men. One thing I quickly want to mention here, those overall ratings are of course our scouts' estimates and do not necessarily represent the players' actual ratings. For example, I know for a fact that Luka Doncic is not an 84 in this draft class, so don't take these ratings too seriously. The first player we should now have a serious look at to pick at number 5 is Deandre Ayton, although chances are somewhat high that the Phoenix Suns pick him up at number 4. Still, if Ayton falls to us, he has the potential to develop into a fantastic player. He is a legitimate 7-footer who possesses incredible athleticism, he can run the floor really well, he's an excellent rebounder, he's good defensively, and he can score both inside and outside. His 3-point shot is not deadly, but it's a solid base to build upon, and overall, like I said, I think he could develop into an incredible all-around center. The big question for us is really if he's available with the 5th pick, but if he is, I'm strongly considering taking him. Now another guy who at least our scout seems to rate fairly high is Brandon McCoy. Now McCoy is primarily a defensive-minded big man, comparable to Deandre Davis in some aspects actually. He has the length and athletic skill set to be an anchor down low, and he does have a solid post-game and mid-range jump shot as well, but his focus, at least in this draft class I'm using here, is primarily on defense. In that role, he could be a nice pickup for us, but let's not forget that Davis fills that role already quite nicely, so if someone else with maybe a different skill set is available, McCoy would definitely not be my first choice. If we're looking for a bit more of a scoring option in the post, then Austin Wiley might be an interesting choice. Now, he is by no means a lethal post scorer already, but his already existing post game is a very solid base to build upon. On top of that, he's an excellent rebounder, not that much of a defender, but I could imagine him fitting in quite nicely next to Deandre Davis, for example. Another big man who could fill more of a scoring role for us would be Wendell Carter, a 6'10" power forward with a good post game and a solid jump shot as well. He already shows flashes of a three-point shot that could develop over the next few years, and even though he's not an elite defender or rebounder yet, he is certainly no liability in those two areas either. His skill set also comes with a solid passing game out of the post, and all in all, at the moment I think I would prefer to pick him over Austin Wiley. Now, there is one more guy we haven't talked about yet who could very well turn out to be one of the best guys in this draft class, and that guy is Mohamed Bamba. Bamba is another 7-footer with an insanely long wingspan, and paired with great mobility for a big man, he could turn out to be a defensive monster. He is a bit light with only 216 pounds and definitely needs to add weight to be able to do damage down low, but his length alone makes him a lob target on almost every possession and also helps him tremendously with rebounding. Offensively, he can step out to about mid-range. The three-point shot is still a bit questionable, but the shot mechanics are definitely there. In the post, he is alright, but nothing spectacular, and due to his rather skinny frame, he will have problems bodying up other guys down low. Still, his ceiling is insanely high, and for that reason alone, he is among my favorites for that 5th overall draft pick. Now, one last guy that I would like to cover as a potential target is Robert Williams, who despite not being the tallest guy, once again comes in with a tremendous wingspan. That already makes him an excellent rebounder and shot blocker, and his post-up skills also show a bit of promise. Now, contrary to Bamba, Williams has the weight to go along with his skill set, but at the same time he still remains athletic enough to outplay slower opponents. Overall, I think his ceiling is slightly lower than Bamba's, but I have no doubt that Williams will be able to make an impact in the league. Now the question is, where does all of this leave us? Now, first of all, I think it's safe to say that both Doncic and Porter will be gone in the top 3. Whether or not the same is true for Bagley remains to be seen, but with us picking 5th overall, I think the chances are high that either Ayton or Bamba are still available. If that is not the case, I still think we'll pass on Bagley, and instead we'll then have a look at Wiley, Carter or Williams. There are also a few other guys that we haven't talked about yet, for example Jaren Jackson or Nick Richards, but ideally we won't have to deal with that rather deep middle-of-the-pack group of players, and can go straight for either Ayton or Bamba, who at the moment I think should be our number 1 and 2 priorities. With that being said, the pre-draft workouts are up next, and we are inviting all of those big men I just talked about, including a few more, and I want our scouting staff to get another look at Bagley as well, so he also gets an invite. And I won't go through all the numbers here, as they pretty much confirm what we already know, but if you want to dive in, then you can of course pause here and have a closer look. And that now leaves us with only one more thing to take care of, the NBA draft itself. So let's jump in and see who we can get for the Louisville Legionnaires with that 5th overall pick. And with the 1st overall pick, no surprises here, Luka Doncic becoming a Cleveland Cavalier, and so the Cavs once again luck out in the lottery, and Doncic might very well be the heir to LeBron's kingdom in Cleveland. With the 2nd overall pick, the Miami Heat then select Marvin Bagley, disregarding any injury concerns, which should now more or less guarantee that either Ayton or Bamba is still available at number 5. At number 3 then, Ayton goes off the table and joins the Atlanta Hawks, certainly a great pickup for Atlanta, however one that removes my favorite prospect for that number 5 pick. At number 4 then, once again no surprise, joining the Phoenix Suns with that pick is Michael Porter, and that now means the Legionnaires are up next. And with Ayton already gone, this decision now a somewhat easy one for me. Bamba is still available and in my opinion at least one step ahead of the rest of the prospects we looked at, and I am still determined to go big in this draft, so Mohamed Bamba, welcome to the Louisville Legionnaires. Now, I simulated through the rest of the first round, which had no blockbuster trades or anything, and so the Legionnaires are now up again with the second pick in the second round, a pick by the way that originally belonged to Phoenix, but we received it in exchange for Sheldon Mack. However, the second round prospects in this draft class are more than disappointing. I think there was not a single player with a rating above 60 available, and so with this pick we selected point guard Trey Baxter, while with the 7th pick in the second round we selected Bruno Petrovic, a 6'10" power forward from Croatia, who will stay in Europe for 2 more years before he's eligible for an NBA contract. From those 3 picks, we then ended up signing, of course, Mohamed Bamba, but not Trey Baxter, whose 59 overall rating was not good enough for me to give up a roster spot. I did, however, retain the rights to Petrovic. Even though I don't have high hopes, a lot can happen in 2 years, but make no mistake about it, I'm not too attached to him, and should we need his roster spot to sign a free agent, we will cut him loose. And speaking of free agency, that is what we will take care of in the next episode. Since we did not draft a point guard, re-signing Yogi Ferrell now becomes a top priority, but we also have a plethora of options coming up, and we will also throw a bit of money at restricted free agents, just to see if we can't maybe steal someone away. All of that and more will happen in the next episode. For today, as always, leave a thumbs up if you like this video. If you want to show your support and stay up to date with this series, then feel free to subscribe. And of course, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!